El Chapo's tunnel escape. By 2015, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was the most notorious drug lord in the world. Head of the Sinaloa cartel, he had already escaped prison once in 2001 by hiding in a laundry cart. When Mexican authorities recaptured him in 2014, they placed him in Altiplano, the country's highest security prison, under 24-hour surveillance. But El Chapo had resources that few prisoners could ever dream of. Deep underground, his cartel engineers spent months digging a mile-long tunnel that led directly into his cell's shower area. The tunnel was nearly 5 feet high, lit with electricity, ventilated with air ducts, and even had a small motorcycle mounted on rails to carry dirt out quickly. On July 11, 2015, Guzman slipped through a hole in the shower floor, climbed down a ladder, and vanished into the tunnel. When guards checked his cell, they found nothing but a hole gaping open where the tiles had been. The escape embarrassed the Mexican government on the world stage. It also highlighted how deeply the cartel's influence ran, since such a construction project would have required heavy equipment, trucks, and complete secrecy in a highly monitored area. El Chapo remained free for 6 months before being caught again in a raid. But the sheer scale of his escape, essentially an underground subway just for him, remains one of the most astonishing prison breaks ever attempted. The Texas 7. On the 13th of December 2000, 7 inmates at the John B. Connolly unit in Texas pulled off one of the most daring and coordinated prison breaks in American history. They weren't just trying to get free, they were prepared to fight their way out. The men, all serving long sentences for violent crimes, had been planning for weeks. On the day of the escape, they overpowered prison staff one by one, maintenance workers, guards, and even fellow inmates. They tied them up, stole their uniforms, and carefully gathered weapons, radios, and cash from the prison. By impersonating staff and controlling the security systems, they managed to move through locked areas without raising alarms. Eventually, the group forced their way out through the maintenance area, stole a prison pickup truck, and vanished into the Texas landscape. Once free, they weren't content with laying low. They launched a string of robberies to fund their escape, including the infamous holdup of a sporting goods store where they stole dozens of firearms. But their spree turned deadly. Just 2 weeks later, during the robbery of an Oshman's superstore in Irving, Texas, they murdered a responding police officer, Aubrey Hawkins. This triggered one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. After more than a month on the run, the Texas 7 were tracked to Colorado. A national America's Most Wanted broadcast exposed their location, and 6 were captured after a tense standoff. The 7th took his own life before being caught. The Pelican Bay helicopter escape. By the 1980s, prison escapes had taken a new form: the sky. Across the world, helicopters were being hijacked or chartered to pluck inmates out of courtyards. One of the most dramatic attempts happened in California in 1987 when inmates at Pelican Bay State Prison tried to fly their way to freedom. The plan was surprisingly bold. Accomplices on the outside hijacked a helicopter at gunpoint and forced the pilot to fly toward the prison yard. Inside, the inmates who were in on the plan were waiting for the aircraft to swoop in and lift them out. But unlike some successful helicopter rescues in Europe, this one didn't go as planned. As the chopper descended, prison guards opened fire, riddling the air with bullets and forcing the helicopter to pull away. The inmates were left behind, and the escape ended in failure. Even though this particular attempt failed, it became part of a broader pattern that worried authorities worldwide. In France, Canada, and other countries, several inmates did succeed in escaping by helicopter, sometimes more than once. Helicopter rescues became so common in France that prisons eventually built heavy anti-aircraft netting over courtyards to stop them. The Pelican Bay case stands out because it showed just how far inmates and their outside allies were willing to go, turning prison breaks into military-style operations that forced authorities to rethink what secure really meant. The escape from Alcatraz. Alcatraz was known as the Rock, a prison built on an island surrounded by freezing waters and strong currents, designed to be escape-proof. But in June 1962, 3 men, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, pulled off one of the most famous escapes in American history. Over months, they secretly dug through the ventilation shafts of their cells using sharpened spoons and a homemade drill. To cover the holes, they crafted fake vent grills out of cardboard. Every night, they climbed into an unused utility corridor, slowly working their way upwards. But their real genius came in the deception. To fool guards during bed checks, they built lifelike dummy heads out of papier-mâché, complete with real human hair stolen from the prison barber shop. On the night of June 11th, they placed the heads on their pillows, slipped into the corridor, climbed onto the roof, and vanished into the night. Their final move was building a raft out of over 50 stolen raincoats, stitched and glued together with heat. They set off into the dark waters of San Francisco Bay. To this day, no bodies were ever found. The FBI closed the case, saying they likely drowned. But rumors persist that the men survived, disappearing into new lives. The Maze Prison Escape. In September 1983, the Maze Prison, also known as Longkesh, was considered one of the most secure prisons in all of Europe. Built during the height of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, it held dozens of members of the Provisional Irish Republican Army, many of whom were serving long sentences for armed attacks. But on September 25th, the prison's reputation for being impenetrable was shattered. 38 IRA prisoners launched a carefully planned escape, the largest in British history. For months, the prisoners had been studying guard routines, smuggling in weapons, and building a chain of communication between the cell blocks. On the day of the breakout, the inmates seized control of a delivery lorry scheduled to leave the prison. Armed with smuggled pistols and knives, they overpowered guards and took hostages, even managing to seize control of one of the watchtowers. Some guards were stabbed and others were beaten, though none were killed. The prisoners then packed into the lorry and drove it straight through the gates. 20 were quickly recaptured within 24 hours, but 18 managed to disappear into the countryside. The breakout humiliated British authorities and made headlines worldwide. The escape became a propaganda victory for the IRA, proving that even the most fortified prison could be broken. The maze would never fully recover its reputation for being secure. The Culiacán Standoff. Ovidio Guzmán, a son of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán and a rising Sinaloa cartel leader, was arrested by Mexican federal forces in Culiacán on October 17, 2019. At first, it looked like a massive win for the government, but the cartel answered like an army. Within minutes, the streets erupted. Gunmen set up blockades, hijacked vehicles, burned buses to stop troop movements, and ambushed convoys. Snipers and armored pickup trucks started popping up across the city. Airports were attacked, civilians were caught in the crossfire. Mexican authorities suddenly faced a brutal choice: fight a pitched urban battle that would kill scores of civilians or cut their losses. After hours of firefights and mounting casualties, the government made the controversial call to release Ovidio, dropping him back into cartel custody to stop the bloodshed. He walked away not from a tunnel, but after a campaign of terror that made the city ungovernable for a day. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.